Hey there, I'm Melanie and I'm your design journey art class expert for watercolor pencils and colored pencils. In this session, we are going to use watercolor pencils to draw an apple, and we're going to use the watercolor pencils just like we would use watercolors. We're gonna blend and mix everything together, and we're also going to use the fact that it's a watercolor pencil to our advantage to add in even more details, because watercolor pencils are very versatile and we're going to use them in different ways in this session. In this session, you will need watercolor pencils. I'm using the Staedtler 24 pack of watercolor pencils here. You will also need brushes. I'm gonna be mainly using the size 8 from the synthetic brush set. I really love this one. You're also obviously going to need a cup of water. Please don't drink the paint water. And obviously we're also going to need paper. I'm just using watercolor paper here. I really recommend watercolor paper. This one has very little texture, which is perfect for watercolor pencils, but you can use any kind of watercolor paper that you have at home that you feel comfortable with. At first, I'm going to pick a lighter pink tone. You can also do red, but I'm just doing a very, very light tone. And I'm just drawing the basic shape of an apple, which is basically like a circle, but it doesn't have to be a perfect circle, obviously, because apples are not a perfect circle. And then you have this kind of dip here, and also at the bottom a little bit of that. So this is just a very, very basic shape, and it doesn't have to look completely like my shape because it's gonna be an apple no matter what. So I'm just gonna go over this again and again to make it darker and darker, and so that we have a more defined line here. So now that I'm done with that, I'm just gonna decide where the stem is going to be. And there's even a little more of this dip here. I was just rounding out this one a little bit because we're gonna have more of it here. And this is gonna be darker, and here's gonna be where the stem is supposed to go. And we're gonna add in the stem later. For now, we're just gonna make this area a little bit darker, and we're going to map out where our shadows are going to be. I'm just using the same pink color tone and just basically very, very lightly making out the shapes and the shadows, and it's gonna be darker here as well. So I'm just darkening up a little bit, but don't press down too hard because we want to be able to blend this later on. Now that I have my most basic shape, I'm gonna pick the next color, which is this pinkish red tone, and I'm gonna add in even more shadows here. This is a very cool red tone, so it's perfect for the darker areas. Here are a lot of shadows as well, so I'm gonna add that in carefully as well, not pressing down too hard. Also, if you press down too hard, you might risk getting too much pigment on there later on, because we still want to be able to add a little bit of details later on. So don't go overboard with the details here, just very lightly color that in. And I say that because I tend to be very heavy-handed. So here's even more shadow here. We can go a little bit darker. Now I'm gonna pick a very light tone. I'm gonna pick a yellow tone, and here's the light supposed to be. So here I'm adding in a warmer tone, and that's really fun because apples tend to have a lot of colors, and we can really experiment with that here and just add in the yellow here. And this will blend very nicely later on. Also using just a little bit of orange here. And now I'm also going to use this warmer red tone and just gonna go over everything again. If you want to add more colors and more pigment, we can always do another layer later on after blending the first one and just go darker, because going darker is always easier than going lighter. So in these areas, this is the last color. I'm adding in a little bit of brown just to darken everything up even more and to desaturate it also a little bit so that it's not so colorful in the shadow areas. And maybe a little bit more red in here, just a little bit. So I think that's it. Now I'm gonna use the brush and a lot of water and just dumping it all on there, and now the magic happens. Everything blends together. All the colors that we put on here now blend together. This is so much fun to see. And you can be super messy with that. It really doesn't matter. I love to use a lot of water and get this full-on watercolor effect here. I'm just gonna skip the shadow parts here and do those later so that they don't blend with that area too much. And I'm gonna use a lot of water here, blending it all together a lot. And you can also put some of the pigment here, over here. Just play around with it. It really doesn't matter. The more fun you have, the better it will look. So I'm putting in even more water. And now that we're done with that, I'm gonna let this dry. So now that all of this is dry, you can see that there are a few areas here where it's not completely smooth, but I actually really don't mind. And I actually just thought that I will add another layer here because I think that it's not dark enough. But like I said, it's always best to do just more layers and build up the colors slowly than to use too much color the first way and then you have trouble to remove it again, because it's really hard to go backwards with watercolors, and it's just way easier to build up your colors slowly. So here I'm just doing another layer and just adding in even more of the pigment. I thought that it could use a little bit more red, so I'm doing that and just coloring over that. Again, very, very lightly because it gets darker after going over it with the water. So now that we've done that, I'm gonna do the same thing again and just blend this. And you can see that it's already getting a lot darker. I really love that color. I think I'm very happy with that one. And I left this part blank. I didn't add any more color here because I want the yellow to shine through, and this area is supposed to be a little bit lighter. So now I'm doing that here. Blending all of this together. Again, I'm playing around a little bit here, adding in more water, just having fun and messing around a little bit. I really like the saturation that we've got now. So now I've used my hairdryer again to make it a little bit drier. It's not completely dry because I just want to let the watercolors do their magic as well and let them dry a little bit, but it's dry enough so that we can work on this area here as well. And you can see that these areas are starting to form, and I actually really like those. So now I'm going to blend this darker area as well, and I'm just adding in a little bit more of the darker tone just to make sure that we are going to have a shadow area here. So, and now I'm blending all of that as well. So now that we've done this, we're gonna make sure that this is completely dry after we do the next step. So now I've used my hair dryer again to dry this, and you can see that it's a little bit wobbly now, but I'm just gonna press this in between heavy books later to get it to be a little bit more straight again. And now that we have done all of this, I want to go back in with the watercolor pencils and just add in a few details. And at first we're obviously gonna need a little stem, and I'm just gonna do that with the watercolor pencil and just very firmly pressing down. This is a brown tone that I'm using here, and just color that in. I'm not even gonna blend this with water. I just want the stem to be super dark and visible here, and now we have a stem. It looks so much better already. And now I'm also going to do a few more shadows and everything, and we are going to get this colored pencil texture, obviously, but I really like it. It has this illustrative style to it, and I'm just gonna go over everything, over the shadow areas. Here you can see that I'm darkening all of that up, and then I'm doing these little lines here. I'm just doing this. So I'm pressing harder here, and then I'm letting go slowly and just doing this flickering thing here. And I do that over and over again over the entire apple, but only here I'm gonna use brown, and in the middle parts I'm gonna use red tones for that. And I'm also going with the shape of the apple. So here I'm going to do it this way, and then once I'm in the middle, I'm gonna change direction and go the other way. And it's also easy if you just flip your page and just go with your hand, if you're right-handed, obviously in the other direction. So you're just always going with your movement. It's so much easier to do it that way. And so I'm just doing the entire apple now. And now that we are in the shadow part again, I'm using the brown tone again, just coloring in the edges a little bit more, and then doing the same here. And then I'm using more color here in our shadow part. I'm using a red tone now. So now that we're done with that, I'm also going to use this brown tone to add some little dots, because no apple is ever perfect, and I'm just adding in a few little details like that. And that's it. That's our little apple. You can see that we have a little bit of this colored pencil texture. We also have these watercolor parts, and I really love the combination of those, and it's a huge advantage to use watercolor pencils for this as opposed to watercolors and pencils, because you just have the same colors here and you can mix them pretty easily. As you've seen, we just layered different colors on top of each other and then blended all of that, and then we went back in with the same colors and darkened everything up. So it's super easy to use watercolor pencils for this if you want to achieve this result. make sure that you have the right amount of color that you want. And like I said, it's always easier to go from lighter to darker as opposed to the other way around. I think that those are the perfect colors for our little apple. I really enjoyed using those watercolor pencils because they blend super easily and you still manage to get this cool colored pencil texture. I also used this size 8 brush, and I think that it is the right size for this project because it holds a lot of water and it's still super easy to control because you still manage to get this super thin line here. Painting fruit is always a fun idea and a good opportunity to learn. You also don't have to worry about making it too perfect. Just have fun with the process, mess around with the colors and really enjoy it and learn a little bit more about the colors and the pigments, about mixing. So grab your brushes and let's go. We'd love to see your results. Share them on Instagram using the hashtag #MyDesignJourney. Thank you so much for watching. I really hope that you enjoyed this design journey art class.